When the controversial case landed on her desk, many expected compromise. The defendant, a wealthy businessman, had a team of high-profile lawyers arguing for leniency. But this judge, known for her no-nonsense approach, refused to bend. She meticulously reviewed the evidence, ignoring outside pressure. Her final ruling, a firm sentence, sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Critics called it harsh, but supporters praised her for valuing justice over privilege. This moment became a defining example of how true judges operate, without fear or favor. Female judges often face unfair scrutiny, with some assuming they're too emotional for tough rulings. This judge shattered that myth. Her calm demeanor and sharp legal reasoning left no room for bias. Even the defendant's attorneys, initially dismissive, later admitted her fairness was undeniable. Her courtroom became a stage where gender stereotypes collapsed under the weight of professionalism. In an era where women still fight for equal respect in law, her actions spoke louder than any speech about equality. The public's response was polarized. Social media erupted with debates. Some hailed her as a hero of justice, while others accused her of being overly rigid. News outlets dissected her career, uncovering past cases where she'd similarly refused leniency for the powerful. What stood out was her consistency. She treated every case with the same rigor, regardless of status. This transparency earned her respect even from opponents, proving that integrity outweighs popularity in the long run. Beyond the immediate case, her ruling set a precedent. It showed that the law applies equally, deterring others who might exploit wealth or connections. Legal scholars noted how her judgment reinforced public trust in the judiciary, a system often criticized for favoring elites. For aspiring female judges, she became a role model, proving that authority isn't about gender, but about unwavering ethics. Her decision wasn't just about punishment. It was a statement about accountability in a divided society. Years later, this case remains a benchmark in legal discussions. Law students study her reasoning, and activists cite it as proof that systemic change is possible. The judge herself never sought fame, but her commitment to justice immortalized her in legal history. In a world where power often corrupts, she stood as a reminder that some wear the robe not for prestige, but for the solemn duty to uphold what's right, no matter the cost. The case quickly became a media sensation, with headlines splashing across major news outlets. Reporters camped outside the courthouse, eager for any statement from the judge, who, true to her nature, remained silent. Talk shows debated whether her ruling was a victory for justice or too severe, while legal analysts dissected her every word. The spotlight only grew brighter when the defendant's family launched a PR campaign to sway public opinion. Yet, the judge's refusal to engage in the circus only solidified her reputation as someone who answers to the law, not the court of public opinion. What made this judge's stance remarkable wasn't just the verdict. It was her willingness to stand alone. Behind the scenes, she faced pressure from political figures and even colleagues who urged a more diplomatic approach. Yet she held firm, citing precedent and the letter of the law. Her courage became a case study in judicial independence, taught in law schools as an example of how to resist external influence. For young lawyers, her story is a reminder that true justice requires backbone, not just intellect. In a twist no one predicted, the defendant himself later expressed respect for the judge. During a prison interview, he admitted, "She gave me no special treatment, and that's what I needed." His unexpected humility turned the narrative, with even his supporters acknowledging the fairness of the process. This moment humanized the judge further, proving that her strictness wasn't about cruelty, but about restoring accountability. It also sparked discussions on redemption and whether the justice system's true goal is punishment or transformation. The case's impact extended beyond the courtroom. Legislators cited it when drafting stricter anti-corruption laws, and other judges began applying similar standards in high-profile trials. A grassroots movement even emerged, demanding more transparent judicial appointments to ensure others like her could rise. Though systemic change is slow, her ruling became a catalyst, proving that one principled decision can challenge decades of complacency. For reformers, her name became shorthand for the kind of integrity the legal system desperately needs. In an era of deep distrust in institutions, this judge's story is a beacon. She didn't just interpret the law, she embodied its spirit, showing that justice must be blind to power, wealth, and gender. Her legacy isn't just in the sentences she handed down, but in the hope she inspired, that the system can work when individuals refuse to compromise. As debates about judicial reform rage on, her career stands as a challenge to aspiring judges and citizens alike to demand more from those who wear the robe. Behind her stoic courtroom demeanor lay untold personal sacrifices. Colleagues revealed she routinely worked 14-hour days reviewing case files, missing family milestones to ensure no detail was overlooked. Death threats from angry defendants' associates forced her to accept security details, yet she refused to let fear influence her rulings. In interviews, she admitted the isolation that comes with being the judge everyone debates, but no one truly knows. This vulnerability made her humanity shine brighter. She wasn't just an enforcer of laws, but a person who bore the weight of justice's scales daily. Her private struggles became public inspiration when leaked journals revealed her self-doubt and unwavering recommitment to fairness each morning. Years after the landmark ruling, researchers documented its ripple effects in unexpected ways. The neighborhood where the crime occurred saw a 40% drop in similar offenses, a deterrence effect studied by criminologists. Local schools implemented law education programs using her verdict as a case study, with at-risk youth calling her the judge who made consequences real. Most remarkably, victim advocacy groups reported increased willingness to testify, knowing the system could deliver impartial justice. Her courtroom became a symbol that transformed not just legal precedents, but actual community behavior, proving that one woman's uncompromising stand could recalibrate an entire city's relationship with justice. The courthouse steps where she'd once walked alone now feature a plaque honoring the judge who taught us all to believe in fairness again. What truly set this judge apart was her almost superhuman ability to maintain neutrality in emotionally charged cases. Legal scholars analyzed her courtroom language, discovering she used passive voice 73% more often than peers to avoid subconscious bias. Psychologists noted her equal eye contact technique, deliberately alternating gaze between plaintiff and defendant in precise intervals. Even her body language was studied. She kept both hands visible at all times, a subtle signal of transparency. This meticulous approach to fairness wasn't innate but cultivated through daily meditation and what she called moral hygiene, a rigorous practice of self-reflection to identify hidden prejudices. Her courtroom became a masterclass in how justice should look, sound, and feel when stripped of all partiality. Her unwavering standards inevitably clashed with entrenched legal establishment. Senior judges quietly blocked her from prestigious committees, calling her uncompromising to a fault. Clerks reported mysterious delays in her case assignments after controversial rulings. The most telling incident came when a judicial conference excluded her from a panel on sentencing reform, despite being the foremost expert. Yet these attempts to marginalize her backfired spectacularly when junior staff leaked emails showing the coordination, sparking a judicial ethics review. Ironically, the system's resistance became proof of why her voice was essential, cementing her reputation as the judiciary's moral compass too principled to be silenced. Her impact transcended borders when international courts began citing her opinions. The Hague incorporated her standards for evidentiary rigor in war crime trials. Hong Kong protesters painted her quotes about judicial independence on umbrellas during demonstrations. Most surprisingly, authoritarian regimes inadvertently spread her influence. When state media criticized her as Western justice gone mad, it led to underground translations of her rulings becoming Samizdat literature for reformists. This global reach revealed a universal hunger for what she represented, the radical idea that law could be both powerful and principled. Now, from Nairobi to Oslo, law students recite her most famous line like a mantra. The moment justice becomes flexible is the moment it ceases to be justice. A decade after her most controversial ruling, law schools began noticing a dramatic shift in student motivations. Admissions essays increasingly cited her as inspiration, with phrases like, "I want to be the kind of judge who," becoming ubiquitous. The National Judicial College reported a 62% increase in enrollment for their ethics seminars, jokingly dubbed most remarkably. Clerkship applications to her former chambers became so competitive that they launched a public lottery system. This generational impact manifested physically too. Her portrait now hangs in over 300 courtrooms nationwide, not as decoration, but as a silent challenge to every new judge. Will you measure up? The true testament to her legacy? Over 40% of recent judicial appointees under age 45 can directly trace their career paths to her influence, creating what analysts call the integrity wave in modern jurisprudence. In a twist she never anticipated, her decision-making framework became the foundation for groundbreaking AI justice tools. Computer scientists at Stanford encoded her 137 most cited rulings into machine learning algorithms, creating the first ethical adjudication module. This technology now assists judges in developing countries with case overload, flagging potential biases in real time. The AI even adopted her mannerisms. When uncertain, it displays her signature phrase, "insufficient data for meaningful justice," rather than proceeding. Critics initially feared this would dehumanize law, until the system spontaneously generated a profoundly humane output. No algorithm can replace moral courage. That remains your constitutional duty. Thus, her influence evolved beyond flesh and blood, becoming embedded in the digital infrastructure of 21st-century justice worldwide. Her impact transcended legal circles, becoming a cultural touchstone. A Grammy-nominated hip-hop artist sampled her most famous verdict in a platinum-selling album, while a Broadway play about her life sparked debates about artistic license versus factual accuracy. Museum exhibits featured her robe and gavel alongside interactive displays about justice. Most surprisingly, her face appeared on protest signs during climate change marches, with activists adapting her words. "If the law cannot protect our future, what good is it?" This cultural permeation showed how deeply her ideals had rooted in society, not as dry legal concepts, but as living principles that could inspire change in completely unrelated fields. The ultimate measure of her influence? When schoolchildren, asked to name a famous judge, said her name before any fictional TV judge. Psychologists identified three key factors behind her unprecedented public connection: authenticity, her refusal to perform for cameras; moral clarity, consistent principles across decades; and relatability, her open discussions about overcoming self-doubt. Neuroscientific studies found her voice triggered stronger activity in listeners' prefrontal cortexes, the area associated with ethical reasoning, compared to other public figures. Sociologists noted she represented a rare trust anchor in an era of institutional skepticism. Most tellingly, focus groups revealed people didn't just respect her. They felt personally defended by her rulings, as if she was standing up for each citizen individually. This emotional bond explained why her retirement announcement trended globally for 72 hours straight. As new judicial appointees took her place, legal scholars grappled with whether her legacy was replicable or unique to her character. Some argued her success relied too much on personal sacrifice, the 80-hour workweeks few could sustain. Others countered that systemic reforms, like her proposed Ethical Infrastructure Act, could institutionalize her values. The debate crystallized when an AI trained on her decisions faced its first real case and requested human oversight, stating, "Justice requires more than pattern recognition." Perhaps her greatest lesson was that while principles can be taught, the courage to uphold them must come from within. Thus, her true legacy wasn't just in the rulings she made, but in the eternal challenge she left. When your moment comes, will you have the strength to be just? Her unique judicial philosophy, dubbed principled pragmatism, became required study in constitutional law courses. At its core lay three tenets. Point 1. Textual fidelity. Laws mean what they say, not what we wish they said. Point 2. Consequential integrity. Considering real-world impacts without bending principles. Point 3. Democratic humility. Respecting lawmakers' roles while safeguarding rights. This approach famously bridged the liberal-conservative divide when she ruled against both partisan gerrymandering and corporate speech restrictions in the same term. Law professors noted her opinions read like Socratic dialogues with herself. openly wrestling with contradictions before reaching crystalline conclusions. By 2023, over 60% of federal judges cited her framework as influencing their methodology, proving that in an age of polarization, nuanced thinking could still triumph. The judge effect rippled through markets in surprising ways. After her landmark antitrust ruling, the targeted tech giant's stock plummeted, only to spur 5 competitor startups to IPO within 18 months. Economists calculated her corporate governance decisions added $430 billion to market capitalization by improving investor confidence. Most strikingly, cities with courts adopting her sentencing reforms saw 12 to 15% drops in recidivism, translating to $9 billion in saved prison costs. Even her smallest procedural rulings had butterfly effects. Her insistence on plain English jury instructions reduced mistrials by 30%, unclogging court backlogs. This proved that true justice isn't just morally right, it's economically smart. Declassified Secret Service reports revealed 14 assassination attempts. Her family required 24/7 protection after a defendant's brother mailed poison law books. Former clerks shared heartbreaking journals where she wrote, "Today I sentenced a weeping mother to 8 years." The law was clear. Why does doing right feel so much like being cruel? Psychiatrists identified this justice trauma as an occupational hazard few discuss. Yet she refused to step down, telling 60 Minutes, "If I privilege my peace over the public's justice, I've already resigned." This raw humanity, not perfection, made her legacy resonate so deeply. From Nairobi to Kiev, judicial integrity clubs now train young lawyers using her casebooks. The UN's Rule of Law Division adopted her standards for monitoring elections. Most remarkably, when Singapore's Chief Justice cited her in overturning a corrupt verdict, it sparked Asia's robe revolution, where judges publicly pledged allegiance to law over political power. Her portrait hangs in the ICC's Deliberation Room, Oslo's Nobel Peace Center, a Tibetan monastery's legal aid clinic. This proved her most radical idea, that justice could be both uncompromising and compassionate, wasn't culturally specific, but universally aspirational. As AI judges and online dispute resolution transform law, her teachings gain new urgency. The Digital Justice Project encodes her principles into blockchain smart contracts. Law students VR train using holograms of her toughest cases. Yet the central question remains, can systems institutionalize integrity, or does justice always depend on courageous individuals? Perhaps her ultimate lesson was that the law isn't just rules. It's the accumulated moral courage of those who uphold them. As her final dissent concluded, the Constitution doesn't enforce itself. That privilege and burden falls to all of us. Law schools worldwide underwent a silent revolution as her rulings became pedagogical cornerstones. Harvard introduced mandatory ethical decision-making labs, where students role-played her toughest cases with AI-generated variations. Tokyo University developed a principled pragmatism index to grade legal arguments. Most innovatively, the Sorbonne launched a comparative law program studying her decisions alongside those of Solomon and Hammurabi. By 2025, 78% of top-tier law schools had restructured curricula around her framework, proving that one judge's integrity could redefine how justice is taught for generations. The ultimate validation came when the LSAT added a new section, Moral Reasoning Under Institutional Pressure, featuring her most quoted dilemmas. Silicon Valley unexpectedly became her philosophy's testing ground. A startup created Justice GPT, trained exclusively on her rulings to mediate workplace disputes. Self-driving car algorithms incorporated her 3-test ethical framework for crash decisions. Most remarkably, her principle of procedural candor inspired an open-source movement to make AI decision trees fully transparent. These adaptations proved her thinking was unexpectedly versatile, applicable not just to law, but to any system requiring ethical choices. As the MIT Tech Review noted, she coded humanity's moral operating system before computers could. Retirement only amplified her influence. She launched the Global Judicial Integrity Project, personally mentoring 300 judges across 60 countries via holographic masterclasses. Her podcast, Dissenting Opinion, became required listening in police academies. When the Smithsonian recreated her chambers as an interactive exhibit, visitors could experience her famous 3 a.m. deliberations through VR. This active retirement shattered stereotypes about judges fading into obscurity. Instead, she proved that moral authority compounds with time. Her most quoted retirement remark, "The robe may come off, but the duty never does." The true test of her legacy came during the 2028 constitutional crisis, when all living former clerks, now judges themselves, simultaneously cited her precedent to block an authoritarian power grab. This uncoordinated act of collective courage demonstrated how principles outlive individuals. Law scholars now speak of standard, the idea that justice isn't measured in verdicts alone, but in how many stand ready to defend it. As her final law review article concluded, the law is only as strong as the weakest conscience sworn to uphold it. Thus, her story ends where it began, with the radical notion that one person's unwavering commitment can tilt the scales of history.